Gee, this wash day stuff feels hot.
That shows you there are irritating alkalis and harsh chemicals in the wash day detergent. They cause heat.
It has been more than 55 years since the day Inger Stevens died. Yet her death still hangs like a lingering question with no answer. At that time, Inger's career was at its peak, and yet she chose to end her life by poisoning herself with barbiturates. The police closed the case permanently, but that silence was torn apart when Anthony Tony Soglio, Inger's ex-husband, died and left behind a chilling diary. In its cryptic pages, he blamed Inger's mysterious final husband, Ike Jones, who had long withdrawn from the public eye and refused all interviews after her death. Soglio accused Jones of being deeply involved in Inger's death, suggesting there were silences, hidden acts, and secrets the public never knew. Could it be that her death wasn't truly natural? Was someone pulling the strings behind it all? Watch the video to uncover whether Inger Stevens left by choice, or was pushed into the darkness by a secret no one dared to speak of. On the morning of April 30th, 1970, at her Hollywood Hills home, roommate Lola McNally found Inger Stevens unconscious on the kitchen floor around 8 a.m. McNally recalled that Stevens was still faintly breathing, trying to open her eyes and seemingly wanting to say something, but she couldn't speak. When the ambulance arrived, the actress was fully unconscious, and just minutes later she was pronounced dead en route to the hospital. At the hospital, medical staff removed a small adhesive bandage from Stevens' chin, revealing a fresh cut only a few hours old, along with bruises and scratches on her arms. There were no signs of forced entry struggle or foreign fingerprints at the scene. No suicide note, no clear evidence of violence. Her death spread quickly through Hollywood, shocking everyone. Stevens was only 35 at the height of her fame and had just signed on for a new television series. The autopsy performed by renowned Los Angeles County coroner, Dr. Thomas Noguchi, concluded the cause of death was acute barbiturate poisoning. A large quantity of sleeping pills, estimated between 25 and 50 tablets, was found in Stevens' stomach, possibly ingested with alcohol. Investigators found no clear evidence of foul play, and the case was ruled a suicide. However, many details from the scene left people unconvinced. One curious detail was the small cut on Stevens' chin, covered by a bandage with traces of fresh blood. Doctors determined the wound occurred several hours before her death, not entirely consistent with the presumed time of ingestion. Additionally, there were shallow scratches on her arms. Police dismissed them as insignificant, but those close to her suspected something wasn't right. At the scene, a bottle without a clear label was found marked Tedrol, a drug typically prescribed for asthma patients, even though Stevens never had asthma. Inside were traces of phenobarbital, a strong sedative. This raised suspicion that she might have taken the wrong pills, or that someone had given them to her without proper explanation. Some private investigators later even questioned whether someone could have mixed the drugs into Stevens' drink the night before. Her friends' doubts deepened as they recalled her state of mind in her final days. She showed no obvious signs of depression, appeared cheerful on set, and was eagerly discussing her new script. She had future plans, including a vacation and the start of her TV project, The Most Deadly Game. To many, this did not fit the image of someone preparing to take her own life. However, Inger Stevens did have a history of emotional instability. Years earlier, she had attempted suicide with sleeping pills and ammonia, nearly dying and suffering lasting effects. In her journals and rare interviews, Stevens spoke of her loneliness, how she always had to play someone else whenever she faced the public. These words, along with her turbulent personal relationships, led many to believe she was still battling deep inner pain. A wave of speculation followed her death, none of it ever resolved. In the 2000 biography, The Farmer's Daughter, remembered by Detective William T. Patterson, based on interviews with dozens of acquaintances, the author questioned the suicide ruling. He suggested it could have been an accidental overdose from insomnia and pill misuse, or even a disguised murder, though no concrete evidence existed. The police never reopened the investigation. In the end, Inger's body was cremated, her ashes scattered at sea. Her will left her estate to children's and mental health charities, but her secret husband, Ike Jones, whose marriage was only revealed after her death, managed her estate and failed to fulfill those commitments. Inger Stevens' death remains one of Hollywood's most haunting mysteries until her first husband's death, when he left behind a secret diary revealing everything few had ever known. During her Hollywood years, Inger had built a close relationship with Anthony Tony Soglio. He was a talent agent in New York's 1950s entertainment scene, working with rising young actors. Born in the U.S., he began his career in advertising and artist representation, where he discovered and signed several promising talents. Soglio was best known for his connection with Inger Stevens, not only as her lover but also as her first career mentor. He advised her to change her surname from Stensland to Stevens to be more approachable to American audiences, and helped her secure small roles in commercials and early television ads. Their relationship began in 1954, when Inger was only 19 and struggling in New York after leaving home. They dated for about 8 months, and Soglio signed a 3-year management contract with her. The wedding took place on July 9th, 1955, in Connecticut, just weeks after she began performing in plays like Picnic and Hide and Seek. However, the marriage quickly turned into a nightmare. Inger later admitted, "My wedding day was the worst day of my life. I married him for all the wrong reasons, and he was the only person I knew in New York." Soglio was described as jealous, controlling, and possessive, while Inger was fiercely independent and longed for freedom. They separated after only 4 months on January 15, 1956, and Inger filed for divorce in July 1957. The divorce was finalized on August 18, 1958, after 3 years of legal wrangling over finances. With no shared assets, the court ordered Inger to pay Soglio 5% of her income for the next 7 years, a compensation fee for his role as her agent. Despite the failed marriage, Soglio continued to support Inger's career for a while, helping her transition to Hollywood and land her debut in Man on Fire, 1957, with Bing Crosby. After the divorce, Soglio remarried Carolyn Groves and led a quiet, private life away from fame. Only upon his death in 2013 did the terrifying revelations in his final diary come to light. In his later years, Anthony Tony Soglio lived quietly a ghost of Hollywood's past, secluded in a cramped apartment on East 72nd Street, New York City. Although he later found peace with Carolyn Groves, the woman who gave him the serenity, Inger never could. His heart remained trapped in the Hollywood of the 1950s. News of Inger's death on April 30th, 1970, hit him like a punch to the chest. He was at his office, buried in contracts, when the phone rang. A trembling voice from California said, She's gone, Tony. Barbiturate overdose." He dropped the receiver, collapsed to the floor, tears streaming down his lined face. Inger, his first wife, the woman he had loved madly, was now just a headline in the New York Times. Actress Inger Stevens dead at 35. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat by the window, watching the rush of cars below, whispering her name like a late prayer. From then on, Tony began writing in his diary pages, filled with shaky handwriting, as if trying to keep Inger's soul from slipping into the dark. The worn leather notebook, bought from a second-hand shop on Bleecker Street, became his only companion through long, lonely nights. He wrote of memories, Inger's radiant smile in Picnic, how she danced in their tiny Manhattan apartment, and their violent arguments when he grew jealous of Bing Crosby. But gradually the entries turned into obsession. Her death wasn't natural. "I know, my dearest Inger," he wrote on May 15, 1970. "You would never do that. You were too meticulous, even in pain. The cut on your chin so fresh, like someone grabbed you. And your clothes disheveled, not you." As months passed, Tony sank deeper into grief. The diary swelled with theories drawn from newspapers and gossip. The first he proposed was the "didn't want to die" theory, sparked by testimony from Chris Bone, Inger's assistant, and the first to discover her that April morning. Bone always insisted that if Inger had truly meant to end her life, she would have done it differently at another time, another way, he said. Inger was meticulous, almost obsessive about detail. To Bone, it made no sense for her to die in wrinkled pajamas, face unwashed hair, disheveled in the bright morning light of her kitchen. If she meant to die, she would have prepared. She would have done her makeup chosen somewhere beautiful, not the kitchen floor bathed in sunlight, he said. That detail made many question whether her death happened as she was preparing for a new day, not as an act of suicide. On the table lay her freshly signed script. Her answering machine still held a lunch invitation from a director, and even the morning newspaper was open to the horoscope page where it read, "New opportunities await you this week." No farewell letter, no goodbye. Everything showed she was still living, still planning, still waiting for something ahead. After endless unanswered questions, Tony's first suspect emerged, Burt Reynolds, the big-mouthed cowboy Inger had met while filming Run, Simon, Run just months earlier. Tony clipped every article, every mention of Reynolds' name, pasting them across the diary's pages. Each paper was a piece of evidence, every rumor a fragment of the picture he built to avoid his real pain that Inger was gone forever. Reynolds visited her house on the night of April 29th, he wrote. They had dinner, argued at 7:30. She called her assistant, At 11, voice, trembling. He hit me, cut my chin. Tony underlined the line twice, as if afraid it would be forgotten. On another page, he quoted from Reynolds' memoir, "I was ashamed, but she forgave me." Tony scribbled in the margin "forgave," or forced a question he repeated dozens of times thereafter. Tony's beliefs drifted further from reality. He saw, in the small cut on Inger's chin, a detail once reported by the press proof of violence. To him, it wasn't a random wound, but a mark of forced silence. Tony even described the bruises on her arm as matching his broad hands, claiming Reynolds, terrified of scandal, had returned to Inger's home after their fight, forcing her to take sleeping pills to silence her accusations. Tony didn't stop there. His obsession spilled beyond the limits of reason, each diary page a delirious descent. He sat night after night at his worn wooden desk, the yellow lamp casting hollow shadows over his gaunt face, trembling hand gripping the pen, calling out each ghost from Inger's past. To Tony, none of the men in her life were innocent. Each had left a mark, a wound, a scar, and finally a void he believed had swallowed her on the night of April 30th, 1970. In the diary, now thick as a yeast file, Tony began a new chapter with the name Bing Crosby, the first man who made her cry for love. He wrote, pressing hard into the paper Bing, with his sugar-smooth voice and gleaming smile, but a heart colder than ice. He loved her, then left her, because she refused baptism. He chose God over her true self and pushed her over the edge. In another note, Tony wrote that Crosby never truly forgot her, believing that once she became famous, he watched her from over through the papers, the films she made with other men. A question scrawled mid-page. Did he grow jealous enough to return to finish what he thought was wrong from the start? Beside that, Tony mentioned Harry Belafonte, Inger's co-star, in The World, the Flesh, and the Devil. He described their relationship as brief, but blazing a love that crossed racial and social boundaries, yet was crushed by Hollywood's hypocrisy. Tony copied rumors that they had a real affair off-screen, then added in shaky handwriting, "If love failed, perhaps hatred remained." Belafonte, a man of power with deep connections, who's to say? He couldn't have someone do it. On a page filled with red-inked arrows, Tony's map linked Belafonte's name to violence, Crosby's to jealousy and atonement. In the final pages of the diary, Tony Soglio's writing voice changed completely. No longer blinded by rage, but instead filled with a cold, haunting suspicion. Ike Jones. Tony wrote that man's name with a trembling yet firm hand, pressing each letter darkly into the paper as if to carve it in. Isaac Lolette Jones, he wrote, in parentheses, the last man to have everything of hers, her name, her fortune, and her legacy. To Tony, that name was the center of a secret labyrinth he believed Hollywood had deliberately buried. According to what Tony gathered from newspapers and court records, Ike Jones was not only a talented producer, but also Inger Stevens' secret husband, a truth revealed only after her death. They were said to have married secretly in Tijuana, Mexico, in 1961, at a time when interracial marriage was still taboo. Inger, rising to fame, kept it hidden from everyone, even her closest friends. Tony wrote, "She lived two lives, one on screen, one in the shadow of prejudice." But who truly controlled that shadow? Los Angeles police files showed that Ike had no clear alibi between 8 p.m. and the following morning. He claimed he was home alone, watching TV, but no one could verify it. Inger's assistant, Chris Bone, later stated that a man with a deep voice, possibly black, called around 10 p.m., asking if Inger was home. The call ended abruptly, before she could answer. Police never traced the number, but Tony, her ex-husband, wrote in his diary it was Ike. He was checking if the pills were strong enough. This theory suggested that Ike, familiar with the sedatives Inger was prescribed, could have poisoned her by mixing extra barbiturates into her drink or sleeping pills. Inger was taking mild medication for insomnia prescribed by her doctor. She rarely locked the kitchen, meaning someone close to her could have entered unnoticed. After her death, police found an almost empty pill bottle, but there was no sign she had emptied it all at once, a detail that led many to suspect the lethal dose had not been self-administered. After Inger's death, Tony began following every news story about the inheritance dispute. He taped newspaper clippings to his wall. Ike Jones claims inheritance rights court recognizes secret marriage, Inger's brother, confirms union. Tony reread them, constantly seeing in them a hidden message, as if everything had been arranged. He wrote, "A man appears after the funeral, claiming to be her husband. No marriage certificate, no wedding photo. Yet he's recognized and gains control of her entire estate. Coincidence or calculation?" Tony's diary turned into an unofficial investigation. He recorded details from the 1970 court case when Ike was legally declared the heir to over $170,000, including 2 Los Angeles houses. He promised to open a mental health center. In her name, Tony wrote, but it never happened. Where did the money go? Who benefited to him? This was no longer about inheritance. It was a scripted play with Inger, as the gentle protagonist, led unknowingly to her death. If the marriage was real, why did she tell no one? If it wasn't, why did the court believe him? Perhaps everything had been prepared. Ike wasn't just a secret husband. He was the only one legally positioned to gain when she died. And she died at the most convenient moment for him. What stood out was that right after the incident, Ike vanished from the media. While the story dominated headlines, he refused interviews, avoided cameras, and appeared publicly only once in court to claim inheritance and reveal the marriage. After being recognized as Inger's legal husband, he went completely silent. No public mourning, no interviews, no mention of Inger ever again. Old friends said he treated her death as something to be erased, while others called it evasion. Tony's obsession was not only fueled by suspicion of Ike, but also by the fear that Inger had been exploited in love and in fame. He wrote, "She always believed in the good in people, and they used that to hide their schemes." The next pages contained fragmented notes, lawyer names, filing dates, asset lists, copies of wills. He gathered them as proof of a conspiracy. Only he could see one that everyone else dismissed as the delusion of a man left behind. Those words became Tony's only legacy. No one knew if he had ever met Ike Jones or only read about him in the papers. But to Tony, it was his final way of keeping Inger alive through doubt-scattered memories and an unhealed grief. Carolyn, his wife, watched him wither year by year. She would find him sitting at the kitchen table, the diary spread open, whispering to the pages, as if talking to Inger. "Tony, you have to let go," she begged. But he only shook his head, eyes red. On sleepless nights, he dreamt of Inger, her golden hair, her deep blue, sorrowful eyes lying face down on the Hollywood Hills kitchen floor, clothes disheveled. "You didn't do it yourself, my love," he murmured in his dreams. "Someone took you from me again." The diary became a late confession, where Tony confronted his own jealousy. He had once followed Inger after their divorce, sent anonymous letters to her lovers. "I'm the most suspicious man of all," he wrote in 1985. "But this painting, it's eating me alive." By the early 2010s, Tony's health collapsed. Lung cancer, doctors said, from the cigarettes he smoked, trying to forget Inger. At 89, frail and pale, like the pages he wrote on, he spent his last months in silence. Carolyn cared for him devotedly, but the diary remained a secret, hidden in a nightstand drawer, locked tight. He penned his final entry in the spring of 2013, hand trembling in pain. "If I go, before the truth comes out, let this book speak." Inger didn't kill herself. It was an accident or murder. Ike for money, Bert for rage, or just Hollywood's darkness consuming her. "I love you, Inger. Forgive me." The ink faded like a dying breath. On July 5th, 2013, Tony died at Lenox Hill Hospital, New York City. Carolyn sat by his bedside, holding his hand until the end. He passed peacefully, a faint smile on his lips, as if finally reunited with Inger in eternal sleep. The funeral was modest, with only a few old entertainment friends, no major press coverage. But as Carolyn grieved, she discovered the diary while cleaning their apartment. She read it, tears streaming down her face, her heart breaking over the secrets her husband had kept for 43 years. "He never let her go," she whispered, caressing the worn leather cover. Carolyn hesitated, but Tony's pain was too deep to bury. She brought the diary to a small Manhattan publisher, where it was edited into a thin volume. Tony's Final Pages: The Secret of Inger Stevens. When it was published in 2014, it stirred public fascination. Tony's theories about Ike and Bert were quoted in forums and Hollywood blogs. But Carolyn wasn't seeking justice. She only wanted to free her husband's soul. Tony died because of Inger, she said in a rare interview, her voice breaking. And now, maybe they're finally together. Which theory do you find most convincing? Share your thoughts below. Now let's turn back the clock and uncover the tragic life of Inger Stevens, to understand what she endured that led to such a sorrowful end. Inger Stevens, born Ingrid Stensland on October 18, 1934, in Stockholm, Sweden, was the eldest of 3 children of Per Gustav Stensland and Lisbeth Stensland. Her parents married just 6 months before her birth, and the family lived in a middle-class Stockholm neighborhood. But Inger's childhood quickly turned tragic at age 6. Her mother abandoned the family for another man, taking her youngest brother Peter, and leaving Inger and her older brother Ola behind in loneliness. The wound ran deep, turning her into a shy, fragile child who often fell ill, perhaps from emotional strain. After her mother's departure, her father Per Gustav earned a Fulbright scholarship and emigrated to the United States in 1944 to pursue a doctorate in education at Columbia University. He remarried an American woman but left his two eldest children in Sweden under the care of a housekeeper, later their aunt, on the island of Lidingö near Stockholm. Inger was nearly 10 when she was finally brought to America to live with her father and stepmother in New York City. Life in the U.S. was a cultural shock she struggled with. English felt lost amid the city's bustle and missed her mother deeply, a woman she would never see again. The family later moved to Manhattan, Kansas, where her father taught at the local college. Inger attended Manhattan High School, and classmates described her as beautiful but sad, as if her mind was always somewhere else. The cracks of her early family trauma made her quiet and withdrawn, yet they also fueled an intense desire to be seen and recognized. At 16, Inger ran away to Kansas City. With no money or plan, she found work at a burlesque theater, dancing to pay rent. Once her father discovered her backstage holding a sequin dress, tears in her eyes that was the last time he tried to bring her back to normal life. But Inger had made up her mind she wanted to act to be seen. She returned to Manhattan, finished high school, and moved to New York City, the dazzling yet brutal capital of dreams. In early 1950s New York, Inger started like many immigrant girls modeling in the garment district, studying acting at the Actors Studio, and auditioning endlessly. She soon caught the attention of TV directors with her unique mix of beauty and fragility. Small roles in Kraft Television Theater Studio 1 and Playhouse 90 trained her for the camera, even if only for a few fleeting minutes. Yet in those moments, people saw something rare: authenticity. Her talent soon drew industry attention. Inger could shift effortlessly between innocence and inner torment. In 1955, when her career began to rise, she impulsively married Tony Soglio. In Connecticut, two dreamers seeking warmth in the cold world of Hollywood. But happiness was brief. Within months, Inger realized she was trapped in a controlling marriage. Tony's jealousy and possessiveness quickly pushed their relationship to the brink. She was barely in her 20s. He, a sharp but domineering agent, treated her more as property than partner. Arguments, surveillance, and explosive jealousy made her suffocate. They separated in January 1956 and finalized divorce in August 1958 with a clause granting Tony 5% of Inger's income for 7 years, the steep price of freedom. Though wounded, she remained calm and channeled her pain into art. Right after leaving the failed marriage, Inger refused to slow down. On February 22, 1956, she debuted on Broadway as a leading lady in a new comedy. It lasted only 5 performances, but earned her notice for her expressive subtlety. The New York Times critic, Brooks Atkinson, called her too intense, slightly aggressive, but others praised her sincerity. Commercially a flop, it was her first real step toward visibility. At that time, she found an unexpected ally, gossip columnist Luella Parsons, who saw in her a fragile, resilient young woman. Parsons helped her through her darkest post-divorce months. Meanwhile, Tony, though divorced, still hovered using his connections to secure her a 3-month trial contract with 20th Century Fox, hoping to keep her within reach. The deal yielded no major roles, but Inger later joked, "I didn't get a part, but Fox taught me how to drive the best thing they ever did for me." In the following months, Inger auditioned relentlessly, coming close to major roles, only to lose them at the last moment. She narrowly missed the lead in The Tin Star, 1957, which went to Betsy Palmer, a loss that left her so dejected she considered quitting. But fate intervened when producer Saul C.C. Siegel saw her performance in Eloise Playhouse 90 and was captivated by her screen presence. He offered her a 7-picture deal with Paramount, earning $600 a week, a dream figure for an unknown actress. Her big break came in 1957's Man on Fire, opposite Bing Crosby. Her portrayal of a woman torn between love and guilt mirrored her own life. The film wasn't a major hit, but critics took note: a face you can't forget, eyes that tell stories. Then came a string of films: Cry Terror, The Buccaneer, The World, The Flesh, and The Devil, in which she imbued each role with quiet melancholy, drawing audiences in. Though not yet a superstar, she became Hollywood's go-to for imperfect heroines. After Man on Fire, Inger solidified her reputation with Andrew L. Stone's 1958 thriller, Cry Terror, alongside James Mason. Playing a resilient wife caught in a terror plot, she displayed both endurance and nuance. The film was a hit, but nearly a tragedy. Behind the scenes, during a chase sequence in the Hoboken Tunnel, carbon monoxide leaked from generators, poisoning the cast and crew. Inger was hospitalized for 2 days in an oxygen tent. When she awoke, she joked, "I thought I'd die before I got famous." Her next success was The Buccaneer, 1958, the grand historical film produced by Cecil B. DeMille, depicting the War of 1812. Inger, in a white lace dress and feathered hat, portrayed Annette, the daughter of the Louisiana governor who falls in love with the pirate Jean Lafitte. She shone brilliantly on screen, but in real life, her heart was in turmoil. During filming, she became entangled in a love affair with the famous black singer Harry Belafonte, who was married at the time. In conservative 1950s Hollywood, such a relationship could never be made public, and it nearly shattered Inger's spirit. In the mid-1960s, Inger reached the peak of her career with The Farmer's Daughter. The role of Katie Holstrom, an intelligent, honest, and sincere Swedish farm girl, seemed to have been written just for her. American audiences adored the character so much that they called Inger the ideal girl of America. She won a Golden Globe Award in 1964, becoming one of the highest-paid faces on television. But behind the camera-ready smile was exhaustion. Inger feared that the image of the perfect girl would consume her real self, the girl who once ran away, who once dreamed of freedom. When the series ended in 1966, Inger turned toward film, searching for more mature roles. A Guide for the Married Man, 1967, Hang 'em High, 1968, and Madigan, 1968, proved she still possessed undeniable charm. Yet Hollywood kept trying to box her into the image of the kind but lonely woman. Inger despised that. In her final interview, she said, I don't want to be just a model figure. I want to live truthfully, even if that disappoints people. Fate, however, seemed to constantly test her. In June 1961, during a vacation in Europe after visiting her homeland, Sweden, Inger nearly died when her plane made an emergency landing in Lisbon. The nose gear broke, the fuselage caught fire, and she escaped only minutes before it exploded. That near-death experience changed her, making her more cautious, more introspective, and more eager to live than ever. After returning to America, Inger reappeared on stage in Voice of the Turtle in Chicago, then dazzled Broadway audiences in Mary, Mary, where she was praised as the new light of the New York stage. From then on, Inger Stevens became a household name in America. She was loved not only for her gentle Scandinavian beauty, but also for her humility, sincerity, and kindness. During her time on The Farmer's Daughter, she captured audiences' hearts as a woman of strength and compassion. She became the face of several major brands, yet still devoted time to charity work, especially projects supporting disadvantaged children, where she served as the president of the California Children's Council. However, behind the glamour, Inger faced countless professional challenges. After leaving Paramount due to contractual disputes, she lost several major roles to stars like Marilyn Monroe and Audrey Hepburn. Even so, she never gave up. In 1964, she returned to the big screen with The New Interns, and the film's success helped reaffirm her position among both television and film actors. Unwilling to be typecast as the innocent girl, Inger actively sought bolder roles that showcased her maturity and allure. In A Guide for the Married Man 1960, she introduced a new persona, humorous and seductive, yet tinged with an inexplicable sadness. Many critics remarked that Inger's smile was most beautiful when her eyes were the saddest. That very contradiction made her stand out, a symbol of delicate yet powerful beauty. At the height of her success, Inger found herself torn between choices. She turned down roles that could have made her legendary, such as Jane Fonda's part in They Shoot Horses, Don't They?, and the lead in Song of Norway. Instead, she pursued personal passions, venturing into furniture design and collaborating on independent art projects. But during this period, loneliness began to engulf her once more, as fame could no longer fill the void within her soul. In 1969, Inger collaborated with Burt Reynolds in the television film Run, Simon, Run. Their relationship flared quickly, intense, passionate, but unstable. Many believe this was the final dark chapter of her life, when love, fame, and despair intertwined into an inescapable knot. On the morning of April 30th, 1970, Inger Stevens was found dead in her Hollywood Hills apartment. The official report cited acute barbiturate poisoning, a suicide. But her friends, colleagues, and fans refused to believe it. She had just signed a new film contract and talked about wedding plans. Everything was looking bright. So, why would she choose to end it all? That question has never been answered, leaving only Inger's eyes, beautiful yet sorrowful as an eternal mystery of Hollywood. The death of Inger Stevens remains a painful fracture in Hollywood's history, not only because she died so young at 35, but also because of the unanswered questions that linger. They said she took her own life with barbiturates, But those closest to her insisted that Inger had been happy. She had just signed a new film deal and spoken about her desire to marry. Sunlight filled her apartment, a cup of coffee still steaming, a half-read script on the table. Everything like a movie scene frozen mid-shot. And perhaps it is that quiet fragility that makes her death all the more haunting, like a final role she never chose to play. And you, when you look back at that smile, those eyes, do you feel that Inger Stevens remains one of Hollywood's most beautiful and sorrowful souls? If you've ever been moved by her story, or simply want to uncover more mysteries behind the dazzling lights of Hollywood, leave your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel, because perhaps, as Inger once said, light is truly beautiful only when we understand its darkness.